some of us blocked our childhood traumas, to be sincere. That which happens when you're growing up is what is driving your life right now, because you blocked that. Some parents end up overcompensating with their kids. So you end up doing the things that you wished your parents did for you through your children. If you're not self-aware, if you don't sit down with yourself, they will show up in your 30s, in your 40s, in your 50s, and in your 60s. Have you ever wondered why you and your partner handle money so differently? So today we're talking about how our childhood trauma shapes how we show up financially in our relationships or in our marriage. Welcome, my name is Julia. We talk about growing your money, growing your business, and growing your overall self, okay? So I emphasize on personal growth so much because it helps you be able to grow every other area of your life, okay? So you guys, when I was thinking about this topic, like, I am going to say this, I am so big on self-awareness because it determines a lot of things in our lives, okay? So when you think about how people show up financially in their relationships, in their marriage, you sort of think they're being ignorant or they're doing it maliciously, okay? Like someone is, why are they spending so much money? Why is she saving a lot of money? But these things are actually driven by our childhood. You think someone is doing the way what they are doing just as a surface level. No, it goes deeper, okay? Because it stems from their childhood traumas, okay? How they show up in a relationship in terms of money. It is so difficult for you to expect your partner to change overnight, right? Because they come from, there's something psychological about how they were raised and how they're operating in their adult. So it's so hard for you to just think that you're going to talk to him, talk to her, and then everything is okay. So once you know that this person is coming from this background, it will sort of trickle down to their finances and how they show up in the marriage. You cannot differentiate, you cannot detangle who they were when they were being raised up and the trauma they went through and how they show up in terms of money in a relationship. That would be a lie. So you better, the most important thing is, once you know about their background, then you choose what you're going to what you're willing to take on and what you're not willing to take on. So when you might ask yourself, what are childhood traumas? Because I keep saying childhood traumas here and there, okay? Childhood traumas stems around how you grew up or how you were raised by your caregivers or your parents or the people who were your main caregivers. They determine how the traumas that you carry, okay? It's what you saw. So it doesn't just happen in the terms of behavior, it also impacts your financial decisions. So one of the childhood traumas is, number one, I think I'm gonna say here, financial instability. If you grew up in a home where your parents didn't have any source of income, any sort of or stable financial income, or any sort of financial stability, okay? So this is where you grew up. You guys, money was scarce in your household. Money was sort of unavailable. You didn't see, everything was a struggle. You going to school was a struggle. Feeding yourself was a struggle. Like even sometimes the house was being closed because of rent. You have seen the instability in terms of your caregivers. So it will determine how you operate financially when you grow up, okay? So when you see this dynamic, it is very easy for you to, one, either end up being a reckless spender, meaning you sort of want to compensate for what you missed out, or you end up being a frugal person, like you refuse to spend money at all, okay, to compensate for what happened. Number two, emotional neglect. So you grew up as a child, your emotions were neglected by your caregiver, meaning two things: either your parents they lacked affections toward you, yeah, the love that you expect as a child for a parent to show you. Probably your parents were not able to meet that expectation because probably you are like 9 or 10 kids, so it was just you raising each other, or there was no validation, there was no affection, there was no emotional support from your caregivers, right? So they were present, they might have been present, but they were not present in your life. Like, you never felt their impact in terms of love towards you. Okay, so what happens, when you grow up, you start struggling with your self-esteem, definitely, because you keep feeling like you are not loved enough, or you fear rejection because you feel your emotions were not met. Because you see, the formative years of a child determines how they start attaching to things when they grow up. You are only secure if your parents were present. And when I'm saying present in all areas of your life. So you could express yourself, you knew you were loved, you knew like you had a stable home, your parents were there, your emotions were met, you show up very securely in the world. But if those things were not met, you will have problems in terms of how you attach to things. When this happens, what happens? You end up spending on others to seek love or to seek validation through spending money, right? Yeah, are you seeing? Like, let me tell you, the more you know about how your childhood determines who you become as an adult, you sort of know, you start seeing where things are stemming from. Like, you know, sometimes you can sit down with yourself and which people don't do. I keep saying here, the day you start sitting down with yourself, you will see so many things that you just wonder, why am I showing up in my finances, in my relationships, the way I'm showing up? Because you are not self-aware, because you're not taking the time to understand where these things have cropped up, because there's a possibility, and a high possibility, that they come up from your childhood. So it has to be a responsibility of yours to get to understand the environment at which I grew up. How is it showing up now in my adult life, right? Because things just don't crop up. You're not just a spender. You're just not a saver, a frugal person. You're not just someone who makes sure they don't spend money. Things stem from somewhere. Nothing just comes from nowhere. They come from somewhere, okay? That's number 2. Number 3, when you grow, another childhood trauma is parental conflict, which leads to divorce. Okay, so you grow up in a household where you're exposed to fights and arguments. Like, your parents used to argue and they used to fight a lot. Okay, so you as a child, you will feel very insecure and so anxious. Let me tell you what this trickle down to. You end up overspending, yeah, because you're so insecure, you sort of don't even know how to handle your money. Other people end up being financially avoidant, like you don't want to talk about money at all. Other people end up having intense control of money, yeah, because if the fights that were especially in your household were concerning money, and you've seen what that does to a family, you end up being so controlling of the finances when it comes to your marriage or your relationships. Okay, let me tell you what happens, guys. So for example, your parents used to argue a lot and then they ended up divorcing. So your mom, whoever was left with you, your mom or your dad, struggled financially because they depended on the other partner for financially, right? So when you see that, it doesn't leave your head that we suffered when our dad left, we suffered when our mom left, right? Financially, like probably the household was able to be run properly because both individuals were contributing towards the finances in the household. So if one leaves, then you see the struggle that your mom went through or your parents went through. So it sort of sticks to your head. So when you become an adult, you have 2 ways. You can either go to the very extreme opposite direction, or you go to the other extreme opposite direction where you're like, I will never fight about money. That is what I'm talking about. You become financially unavoidant. Like, if money is what is going to make us fight, then you handle the money, right? Or you're just on the extreme where you want to control to make sure we never have to fight about money in this relationship, okay? Another childhood trauma that is very common is physical abuse and verbal abuse. Guys, if you grew up in a African household, the abuse that was made very like common, like your parent can just take a cup and hit you, like your parent can just take a cup and throw to you, and they can take anything, they don't care if it's something lighting, if it's something heavy, they just take something and they throw at you. Like, I don't know how we survived that era. Okay, so, and some parents went even ahead to abuse their own kids, right? Like, your parents were the people who you first encountered real abuse from, like verbally, like they will say things to hurt you, to say things that used to, they never left your head. Okay, so when you grow up in such an environment, you sort of feel worthless. Like, you don't feel like you're worth anything, because if your own parents were the people who are abusing you constantly, I don't know, I don't even have to use an example here. If your parents were the people who used to do that, you live, when you grow up, are you seeing how it's so hard for you to feel self-worth and to feel secure and to show up securely in this world when your own parents, your own caregivers are the people who were the first abuser? So you feel very worthless. You become so, you don't trust people, because if you can see that behavior in your caregivers, it's so hard to see it that other people can treat you better. Okay, and you're always anxious. Show up in a marriage, in a relationship, you become very, you stop trusting your partner. You sort of have, if I can't trust anybody, like, or you become financially controlling, because you're like, control gives you power, because you already feel like you grew up that power being stripped away from you. Okay, or you become very manipulative to get what you want. Another childhood trauma is abandonment. Okay, this is where your caregivers were emotionally unavailable, or they abandoned you emotionally, or they completely left. Like, you grew up in a household where your father walked away or your mother walked away, so there's always a void of your main caregivers not participating in your own life. Okay, so this child, when you grow up as a child, you feel like something is missing. You feel you're not worth so much. Okay, this is where I said in my anxiously attached video, you become a people pleaser, because you feel like you have to please people for them to love you, right? So you're always going way beyond and above for other people so that they don't leave you. So you become a people pleaser. You cannot say no, right? Again, some people in this case, they use their money to maintain relationship. So you're in a friendship where you're always paying the bill to maintain that relationship. Or in your marriage, you're always feeling like you have to buy your partner for them to stay with you. Are you seeing, like, your money is what is leading this relationship? Even that partner that is using money to lead the relationship, they always feel like the day I lose my money, my spouse will go, because your relationship they lead relationship using money, because they don't feel like they deserve to be in any relationship, or you feel like you don't deserve to be in any relationship where you're not going above and beyond financially to sort of seek for approval. How these childhood traumas show up in relationships. So you've seen all these childhood traumas. We said, number one, financial instability, growing up in a household where they didn't have enough money. 2, emotional neglect. 3, parental conflict, which leads to divorce. 4, physical abuse and verbal abuse. Okay, another thing is abandonment. So those are just a few, to mention a few. So those are common childhood traumas. This is how your childhood traumas show up in relationship or in your marriage. Okay, so fear of scarcity, right? So let me tell you, when you've grown up in financially unstable environment, you have a fear of scarcity, right? So what happens, you become very cautious when you're spending. And this is what I'm saying, when you see someone, they become so conscious how they spend their money. I feel like before you judge someone, you also have to know their stories, because it's so wrong for you to judge someone how they use their money when you do not know where it comes from. It stems from somewhere. They just didn't wake up and decided to spend, or they did not just wake up and decide they are not never gonna use money, regardless of how much money they make, right? So it's important for you to know before you judge. Fear of scarcity makes you become an oversaver. Like you save, save, save. Even when, so you don't even know which number is okay for you. You just want to feel, if I have money, I'm going to be okay. Because I will never want to be in a place where my house is closed because I saw it with my parents. Or I never want to feel like I never lack food. So you end up not spending money at all because it's coming from a fearful place and a scarcity place. Okay, so number two, how this childhood trauma shows up in your relationship is you end up overspending to seek validation. Okay, so because you lacked emotional stability, you lacked, your parents or your caregiver neglected you emotionally, okay, as a child, you might end up being an overspender, right? Why? As we said, because you grew up feeling like you were never validated, you were never loved enough. So you want to feel like there's love. You're feeling the space that was created by your caregivers and your parents to feel good about yourself. So this is how you end up seeing people overspending, and not just overspending, they buy very expensive things. Like they want to impress, they spend to impress, they spend so that when they show up, they are validated for because they were never validated when they were children. Okay, so they seek validation unconsciously in their adult life. So they buy the big cars, and they buy the big houses, and they buy the expensive watches, because they want to be told you're doing well. It's a, and I'm not saying everyone who buys big cars and big houses is because they are seeking, because they're emotionally neglected as kids. But there's a possibility of how you show up is because of something that is lacking how you grew up, right? So they buy everything, that is, show, like something that says I'm here, showy. You want to always outdo everybody so that you can be validated. Another way how a childhood trauma can show up in your relationship is you become an avoidant when it comes to financial responsibility. Guys, if you're in a marriage or in a relation, if you're in a marriage, you see how sometimes one partner can be so involved financially and the other partner can care what is happening. So you're always feeling like these people, you're always fighting because one of you is very invested when it comes to the financial matters, and the other partner could care less. They sort of don't even want you to. They will bring them, if you decide, please, every month we bring them our money together, they will bring the money and then they will remove themselves. Like they do not want to even know which bills are being paid, what is not making sense. They just want to, I brought my money at the end of the month, please, you take care of what you need to take care of. Don't even tell me which bills are not paid. So that's why in relationships you find one person is financially burdened mentally, not because the other person is financially avoidant. They refuse to have any discussion concerning money in that relationship. Even if you have debt, they sort of assume, they hope, they wish and hope when they sleep and wake up, the debt has disappeared. That's how they operate, because it stems from their childhood. Okay, another way that their childhood trauma shows up in your relationship is because you have trust issue or you become financially controlling. I am telling you, one or two of these things will appear in your relationship, and you will not understand why is my spouse so controlling when it comes to every particular shillings. Like, so did you spend, you bought, why did you buy this, and why did you buy this, and why did you buy this? If, for example, can you imagine being in a relationship where your spouse is always nitpicking on the smallest thing? So why did you buy that trouser and probably it costed 500? Or maybe why did you go out with the kids, why did you spend this amount of money? Like they're always controlling the smallest bit. in the household because they want to make sure they never end up going back to where they never had food. Not, sometimes it can reflect like you think they're controlling towards you. No, I'm telling you, I feel like it's not even about you. Sometimes we think everything is about ourselves. Why can't you look at it this way? He's controlling because it's about them. There's something about them that makes them show up the way they show up. It's not necessarily about your relationship or your marriage. It is how they were raised, what they saw in that growing up. Okay. Another way that childhood trauma shows up in a relationship is emotional spending to cope with stress. So many people in this category, let me tell you guys, because you feel like you emotionally, you feel like you're neglected. So you feel like every time you feel like something is shaken. You see, every time you go through a stress is because something is not making sense. So for you to feel better, you end up spending to remind yourself that you're fine, you're worthy, you love yourself. Spending necessarily is driven by the need to self-validate, self-love ourselves, because we feel like there's a place in our life that the love was not there. Okay, so you end up shopping as a way to cope with the stress. So anytime something shows up and you don't know how to deal with it, you end up spending to fill the gap, right? Another way that the trauma shows up in your relationship is the fear of conflict over money. So you're in a relationship and every time you mention money, your partner decides it's okay, do what you want to do. Like anytime there is a conflict towards money, they will not even have that discussion at all. Okay, so this leads mostly to unresolved issues in the marriage or in the relationship, because the other partner has refused to contribute towards any conflict towards money. You raise money, they're out, they shut, they don't want to discuss it. So if for example you get married to a person as the head of the family and they refuse to even have discussion about money, so you're like, so what do we do with this money? For them it's just a no-go zone. You get. So the dynamics in a relationship can be different, where your husband is the head of the family, but you end up taking up the financial aspect of the relationship because your husband is dealing with the traumas of his childhood, that if it shows up in the marriage, then the marriage will not work. So another way that the trauma shows up in the relationship is debt as a form of sabotage. Most people don't know that people who take debt, sometimes they take it to sabotage themselves. Like they were doing well financially, they get a new job, so they pay the debt, they get an increase in their income. Guess what? They go back into debt. But if you sit down with them to just ask them, so why did you take this debt? Or they don't know even why they took the debt, because it's a form of self-sabotaging what was good going on in their life. Okay, and let me tell you guys, when you know subconsciously that's what you do, it's not, you do not intentionally take debt to sabotage your life. It's because it is an unconscious thing, something at the back. Those traumas, sometimes some of us blocked our childhood traumas, to be sincere. You're just like, I will never go back there. Like in my head, I'm just like, I will never go back there. I will never even allow to think about it. So what happens is that you think, you don't even know the traumas that are at the back of your mind and your head, they are now driving your life as an adult. Unfortunately, you don't know that which happens when you're growing up is what is driving your life right now, because you blocked that. You don't even want to think about it. Okay, and that's why you see some parents, we are all parents, and this is not to shame anyone, some parents end up overcompensating with their kids. They take them to very expensive school, they make sure that kid never lacks anything, they make sure whatever the child wants, that's what the child gets. you're overcompensating as a parent because of your childhood trauma, and you think you're just giving your child the best. I don't even think you're doing it for the child. You're doing it for yourself. You're trying to heal your childhood traumas through your own children. So you end up doing the things that you wished your parents did for you through your children. Is it a bad thing? No, it's not a bad thing. We want to do better than how we were raised. And our parents did their level best according to what they knew at that particular time, okay? But if you're not aware, they're driving your life to date unconsciously. You feel like if my child wants this, my child gets this. You think it's just it's just how you live your life. But I'm telling you, I'm giving you this moment. Go and sit down and look at the childhood traumas that you went through. There's a 99%, and this is not fact, this is not research, there's a possibility that your life is operating the way it's operating, your childhood traumas are driving your current life. I'm telling you guys, I will preach on this channel 101 times. You have to sit with yourself. You have to sit down and see the things that you went through as a child, how you were raised. They come to be the drivers in your adult life. You are the adult, but your childhood traumas are driving your adult life. So if you're not self-conscious, if you're not self-aware, if you don't sit down with yourself, they will show up in your 30s, in your 40s, in your 50s, and in your 60s. And let me tell you guys, and that is why you see someone who was battling the same issues when they were in their 20s, they're still fighting the same issues in their 60s and their 70s. Have you ever seen someone struggle financially or struggle with something? Not because it should be something that someone needs to struggle with it all their life. It's because every time you refuse to deal with something, it will keep repeating itself over and over because it's not dealt with. So you cover and you block your childhood traumas, and now they keep repeating. Now you're in your 20s, they repeat so in your 20s you think you're just overspending because you're young. In your 30s you overspend because you think I'm doing this for my kids. In your 40s you overspend because you think you're telling yourself sorry for the years that you worked. In your 50s, you think you're overspending. But the driver behind this is the financial instability that you went through as a child. And unless you sit down with yourself to face, let me tell you, I told you guys, if you don't take a mirror every day and put it in front of you, to see you, that child that is within you crying for so many things, not unless you go reach out to her to validate things that were never validated, to seek and to forgive and to ask for permission and to work on releasing the traumas that you were raised. And let me tell you, some traumas will never even end, but you can know how to deal. You can go around dealing with them. Like, there are things that will never change those are the things that just affected your life. But now you can move through life consciously, knowing. So anytime you find yourself spending on your kids, you're like, hold up, mama, hold up. Why are we spending on our kids like this? Because I'm trying to show them that I can lead. I can love them through spending. I can love them through using my money to seek something in them, right? Because if today you don't spend anything on your child, will they stop loving you? No. Mommy, they will not stop. They love you unconditionally. Your kids love you. And even when they become teenagers and they start acting out, they still love you. If you have shown up as to the best of your ability as a mother, they will love you. You don't have to use money to buy their love. You don't have to use money to buy things so that you make them feel like they're important. I don't think that is something that is right. It is just, you have to reflect it back on you. You're doing it for you, not for them. They didn't ask. They did not ask for all those things, right? So guys, you have to recognize the patterns, the traumas that you have gone through. If, let me tell you, I tell people, if nothing, if you know what, if you sit down with yourself to self-analyze yourself, the things that you're fighting right now as an adult, they are going to make a lot of sense, and then you're just gonna be awoken to the reality of, oh, that's why we are doing the way what we are doing. You become so aware, and then now you're even helping the other partner, because every time, I keep saying this, every time you heal yourself, you heal your family, you give the permission to your spouse to heal, you give permission to your family to heal, because you decided to heal yourself. So you give permission for people who are around you to heal themselves, right? And you also are able to go through life knowing that I don't have to spend money, I don't have to do this, control this in my relationship, because I believe we have the ability to make more money. So you don't have to control the small we bring, right? So, but it has to come from your self-awareness, your self-realization, okay? So you have to recognize your pattern. You have to communicate with your partner. You guys have to communicate. How were you raised? So what was the issues in your family? So were your dad provider or your mom who was the provider? So like, how were your parents being able to meet you emotionally? Did you feel like your parents were there for you regardless of what happened? Did your parents show up in school? Do you feel like you missed out something in your childhood? That's why when people come together, and I said this in my last video. You guys, thank you so much for what you did for my last video. I said, not unless you go for therapy. I'm telling you. You see what I'm saying? What I'm trying to say? These things, you can only know when you have sat down with yourself. And let me tell you, when I say go for therapy, there are so many resources on YouTube, therapists that can help you. If you don't have money to go for therapy, start with free therapy, free resources. So take advantage of that, okay? So another thing you have to do is seek professional help. Therapist, financial coach, to combat your childhood traumas. Develop habits that favors you. Like if you're in a partnership, you set boundaries around finances. You budget together. You set both together financial goals, so that you always get to catch each other when something is going wrong, okay? Guys, please know your childhood traumas. And if you love this video, please like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.